Hey guys, it's Elsa. I absolutely hate intros in YouTube videos, so I'm just not going to put one in here. Today, I'm going to be walking you through how I design fashion illustrations in my sketchbook. Let's get started. The first thing I did here was sketch out the basic shapes of my model. One of my favorite things about fashion illustrations is just how dynamic all of the poses are and how many angles fashion models have. They're just really fun to draw. Also, if you're going to be drawing your own fashion illustrations, one of the most important things to keep in mind is making sure that your poses are dynamic. Because the clothes can be great, but if the model that is wearing them doesn't have an interesting pose, the clothes just tend to look a little bit boring. The next thing I'm doing here is just inking my drawing. I'm using Dr. PH Martins Bombay India ink for this. I'll put a list of all my materials in the description. I should probably note here that this dress is based on the shape of the bottle of pink ink that I have sitting on my sketchbook. I'll be using it to fill it in later too. I actually use this ink as the inspiration for all of the clothes on this spread. It's a pretty cool ink. It's Dr. PH Martins Irridecent Ink, and I think the color is frosted pink or frosted peach or something. It'll be in the list of materials, don't worry. I realize at this point, it sounds like I'm just endorsing Dr. PH Martin's inks. I'm not. I'm not being paid for this. I just happen to really like those inks. And this iridescent one, it isn't really iridescent, it's more metallic, but it's just such a pretty color that I just had to use it for this spread. Once I have the shapes of the dress in and inked, I kind of just made up the colors as I went. I added in this background because I didn't feel like there was enough contrast between the pink and the white, and I really like pink and blue together. Like I said, I'm kind of just making this up as I go. But isn't making it up as you go kind of the basis of design? For this next figure, I already knew I wanted something casual. I was thinking some pink high-waisted jeans, which is what I ended up going with. I had some trouble getting the leg in the right spot, it kind of just didn't look natural, and then the foot went behind the other figure, which I hadn't intended, but honestly, I don't hate. This pose gave me no end of trouble. The twist in the body was really hard, and I ended up putting the boobs a little bit too high and having to change it later, but it did allow me to put a purse into the design, which I really liked. I originally gave this figure like a spiky pixie cut, but I immediately hated it and changed it to this long flowing hair. Another thing to note about fashion illustrations is when you're drawing their faces, keep them really simple. Otherwise, they tend to distract from the clothes a little bit. Also, to be honest, I'm afraid of inking, so I want to get everything perfect in pencil before I move on to the inking stage. I added all of those little wrinkles in the jeans and everything, the little squares on the top. I'm just concerned that I'm gonna mess it up, because I have so many times and then I've had to restart. Alas, even with the best planning and drawing in all of the fingers in advance, I started out with a mistake. I started out by inking the torso, I put in a belly button, and then immediately realized that I hated it, but alas, there was nothing to be done but trudge on, because it's waterproof ink. I made a number of mistakes inking this figure, actually. The most notable one is the edge of that thigh I made far too skinny, tried to fix, and then ended up with a black line that looked weird, and I had to make match the rest of the figure later. It was a headache. I was originally planning on making the purse black and the little squares on the shirt pink, but I ended up thinking it would be easier just to ink them in black, which it was, and I ended up adding some pink on the shirt later. At this point, I decided the purse and the shirt would be white. I wasn't originally intending on having white in this design, but I guess stuff just kind of happens. I was actually really proud of myself that I did not mess up her face or her hair when I was inking it. Little victories, I guess. I did end up accidentally splattering some ink on this page and smudging it with my hand, but hey, I didn't mess up on her hair? I added in some shadows with black watercolor, Normally I use a gray Tombow brush pen, but I just couldn't find mine today, so I used black watercolor to add in the shadows on the first figure. I realized after inking the second that I hadn't done any of this, and also the ink needed to dry, so I figured I should do something. Because of that weird black line I put on the second figure's thigh, I ended up taking a black brush pen in on the first figure and just thickening up some of those lines. I actually really like the impact that it gave those lines. It gave it some drama that it wouldn't have had otherwise. Before you ask, why the blue hair? I have no idea. I think it's just because I wanted to reflect the blue background on the first figure, but without making the backgrounds too matchy-matchy. I didn't put a lot of thought into it, I just kind of reached for the blue brush pen. After painting the skin on the figure, I added in the pink of the jeans. At this point, I realized that this iridescent ink is just a little bit too opaque to be painting over the black ink. It kind of makes my black lines go away a little bit, which I did not like. I added in the pink above the model's head in order to, make the hair pop, I guess. But then there wasn't enough blue, so I added in more blue. I don't know what I was doing with those crazy lines. Something, I guess. I tried to go over the lines with my Tombow brush pen, but it just kind of absorbed into the pink ink, so then I went and re-inked with the Dr. PH Martins ink in order to get all of those wrinkles back into the jeans. For this third figure, I knew I wanted something extra fancy. I started drawing in a pose which was not working out for me. I ended up erasing the whole thing and just deleting that part of the video and restarting. This pose ended up working a lot better, but it's still nowhere close to my favorite pose on this spread. There's a couple major things that I just really hate about it. I think the pose ended up looking pretty natural in the end, but I still just do not like this pose. I thought it looked like a dancer a little bit, so I decided to give some, exotic dancer vibes to it. I put in that leotard with the side boob because I thought that'd be flirty, and then I realized, oh my gosh, the head is way too high up. So I erased it and redrew it, and the face didn't work at all. So I erased it again and redrew it again. At that point, it worked out a lot better, and I put the hair back in. I gave her a flower thing and an extra little tail on her tail skirt, because I guess that's what my brain wanted me to put in there. Remember, I'm just making this up. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm by no means an expert. I don't work for Vogue. In fact, because of Corona, I don't work for anyone right now. To prove my point, just look at how I ink the hair and smudge the ink on the elbow with my hand at the same time. That is pure talent. Look at that smudge. Someone should hang it up in a gallery and pay me for it. I'm joking. I'm not actually good at inking, I kind of just do it for fun. When I finished the face, I realized I had accidentally created stripper Betty Boop. So, to the actual creators of Betty Boop, I apologize. I did not intend to make Betty Boop into a 1940s stripper, but I guess I accidentally did. It didn't help when I gave her red lipstick later, I will admit. However, I was still not intending to create Betty Boop. It just kind of happened. Speaking of things that just kind of happened, when I was using my hairdryer to make the ink dry faster because I'm super impatient, I didn't realize there was a bead of ink that I then blew up across the drawing and ended up turning into an umbrella. Personally, I think the whole umbrella thing was rather clever. I thought for a minute I had completely ruined both this drawing and this video, so I'm pretty proud of myself. By the way, if you're working with ink or watercolor or whatever, using a hairdryer to make the layers dry faster is absolutely genius. It takes your dry time from, minutes to hours to literally 30 seconds. it's great. At this point, I was kind of stressing out about what color I was going to make things. Originally, I was planning on making the leotard pink, but then I thought that would be too much pink, so I made it black and used my Tombow brush pen to make some shading. I also used it to shade the boots, which I was very happy with because it made them look very shiny. And then I ended up just using the pink to fill in the skirt and the flower on her head. I made the umbrella clear because I thought that would be a cool, sexy accent, and also because there's a clear umbrella hanging on my wall right now, and so that was the color of umbrella that I thought umbrellas should be. I repeated the blue background to kind of give the whole spread unity, and also because I found that with fashion illustrations, adding in a little bit of an interesting background will take your illustration from like 0 to like 10 really fast. I should note, at this point, I actually found my gray Tombow brush pen and used that to add in my shadows and a few accents around the page. For a second, I thought the spread was going to be done here, but then I realized it needed something, so I went in with my dip pen and added in white accents with some white ink. Here I think I was using Winsor & Newton's Polar White drawing ink for this. Mostly, I just wanted the umbrella to look more like plastic. That was mostly my motivation here, but I'm gonna say I wanted it on the whole page. Because it looks way better on the whole page, and then I can give myself credit for it. Also, using it on the umbrella did make the umbrella look a whole lot more like a solid sheet and less like a bunch of lines or an empty frame. Ultimately, I decided to be done here, and I just added in the inspiration into my sketchbook so I wouldn't forget it along with the date. If you liked this video, make sure to like it, make sure to subscribe. I'll be making more in the future, so see you then!